Howdy, folks. Welcome back to Viva La Cats. I am your host, Justin Hiles, accompanied by my great friend, Steve Maurer, and we are here to recap, basically, 2023, 2024, the season that was for the Bearcats' first season in the Big 12 Conference. Of course, speaking of the Big 12 Conference, we are a part of the 1012 Network, so make sure to check out the 1012 podcast, as well as the rest of the shows within the network. Great coverage for all things Big 12 there. And our sponsors, Charlie Hustle, which we will talk about a little bit later. Steve, um, a very unfortunate end to the Bearcats' nice little March run that they had going. What are your initial thoughts on that? Because many people, like myself, were not happy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think I was like unhappy with our players because I mean, sure, there was some things you could have looked at. I do think that maybe there was a little bit of officiating there too. But in reality, Justin, like I know the Xavier guys, like they kind of had fun with winning the NIT, but does any like self-respecting fan base, like I mean, I'll say Power Four fan base, because obviously if Indiana State wins the NIT, like they will like gladly hang that banner. That's a huge thing for them. But does any like self-respecting Big 12 team really want to hang like a NIT championship banner? Like, is that like, at the end of the day, our hearts weren't really into it. If we're going to be like power conference, Justin, we got to like bring out all the usual excuses after your team loses a game like that. To be a little bit more serious though, it did suck to see them go out. I wanted them to see them play more baseball. Baseball. I'm sorry. It is baseball season
There's
now.
plenty of baseball coming. Don't
Yes,
worry.
that's true. I wanted to see them play more basketball, to be honest. I wanted to see what a Cincinnati crowd at Hinkle would have looked like. I think that would have been pretty cool. I know Hoosiers kind of overrated by some people. I still like it. So, and I really enjoyed watching UC play at Butler in 2016. Went up there with the Rally Cats that year. So it would have been cool to see that again. Fun place to go, fun atmosphere, and kind of like a historic atmosphere, which I like too. But in the end, I think it just showed how good Indiana State was, that this UC team did everything that they could and still like gave up 85 points to them, albeit Indiana State was at home. But I I still think Indiana State should have been an NCAA tournament team. Like, you see how Virginia played, you see how some of these like first like these early teams played. Like, you're telling me we couldn't have gotten in and I know New Mexico won their conference tournament. Well, and Drake won their conference tournament over Indiana State. But I feel that the Sycamores were not justly done by being left out of the tournament, and they're taking their wrath out on everybody. And you know what? Good for them. I have a feeling that they're going to probably lose their coach because there's been rumors swirling around about him and another job. But if he was offered the Louisville job and didn't take it, I don't know why he would take another job after this run. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we could dive into the Louisville thing a little bit more later too, because it is relevant. It is relevant to Cincinnati, so we can cover that. But I will say, I agree. I think they definitely were snubbed. Like, my energy was absolutely towards get Indiana State in the tournament. Like, they deserved to be there. They had a fantastic season, an incredible record. It was 29-4, right?
Yeah.
Going into the postseason, like going into the tournament, they absolutely should have been there and deserved to be there. And they've proven their case as to why they should be. I think, speaking specifically on the Bearcats side of this and the end of the NIT run for the Bearcats, unfortunately, it is a pretty shitty way to go out. And it's, can let go of it. I can let go of it. I'll move on after, because we haven't really had our recap of this game yet, because we've just kind of been busy and things have been happening. The end of that game, in the way that it ended, in the final 10 minutes, sucked. You have one call that swings all of the momentum in the complete opposite direction. Indiana State's up 4. Bearcats are keeping it a game. It's very close. There's no way that Indiana State's is going to crack this thing open and start going on a tear. It's a very close game. 4 points. That non-call in the back, call it what you want, whatever. Regardless, that then leads to an immediate 4-on-2 break. Indiana State has a clear 3 shot They're a great 3-point shooting team. They nail it as they should, as Indiana State fans would hope. And then West gets pissed, clearly, because of the call. Missed, technical, 9 points after that, plus the possession. That was a complete like game killer, because it doesn't matter what team you are, you can always claw back from like being down. But when you put your team down 9 points against a good team like Indiana State at home in a rowdy environment in their own arena with 7 minutes to go, it is very difficult to make up that gap and to do it effectively. And honestly, they shot pretty well down the stretch, and we made a, we definitely made it a game. The Bearcats shot well down the stretch. Indiana State only had 5 points. I did the math on it. It was like 5 points if you weren't including the basically, free throw game at the end of the game. And that did not include that, obviously technical and all that. So if you take that one play, that one call, missed or whatever not, if you take that out of that game altogether, 5 points from Indiana State in that final 7 minutes. And the Bearcats scored about 16 to that same stretch. So it's one of those things that it becomes very frustrating because you want to just nitpick it. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, the way it goes, could have been up, should have been up more going into that play, going into that situation. And unfortunately, that kind of call swing to some other things towards the end of the game, unfortunately, just doesn't go your way. And that's it. And that's the end of your season. So NIT it is. NIT ends where it does in Indiana State. You'd hope to go into the NIT Final Four and maybe win the whole thing, but doesn't work out that way. And the Bearcats take another Elite Eight exit, but 2 consecutive Elite Eight exits just in the NIT, but we don't say that part very loud. So
one more thing, Justin.
Yeah, go ahead.
As someone who is more of a ball knower than me, the foul that Robbie Avila kept doing that he only got called for once. I don't know if it was that exact maneuver, but the hand to the lower back, like as the guy is going up. Obviously, it's not the same as the two-handed shove while the guy's trying to dunk, which is kind of basketball version of Bush League, where it's like not sportsmanlike. A guy's elevated and you're kind of just trying to injure him basically by pushing him in the back there. But I'm kind of surprised they didn't call that more often. And to be honest, I did not watch much Indiana State during the season. I saw the highlight tape, of course, and I was laughing, obviously at Robbie Avila during the season, but then we played him and that kind of happened.
Yeah.
But, does that, is that push, is that legal? Like it feels like improper contact. And
that's the thing. And I think that's where the frustrating point is because clearly it was a very subtle amount of contact. Like, I'm not going to go and act like he just shoved him and like he was flailing all over and it was this super, super dangerous situation. It's like, oh my God. But it's one of those things that if you're watching clear on the broadcast, you have 3 refs on the floor at all different angles to the same thing. Not a single one of the refs saw it. Not a single one of the refs knowing that when you have a big going up to dunk and you have another guy behind him, if there's contact in the back by rule, that is supposed to be called because it is a safety issue. If I push somebody even slightly, imagine if that you're running at full speed and you jump up and I push you in the back. What does that immediately do? And what did it do to Aziz? You could tell your back puffs out. And so when your back puffs out, the way you land, because of that, the way that is, and your momentum has now shifted backwards. When your feet plant, that can do anything to your ankles, to your knees, but especially your back, because that can really cause you to have that, it can cause your spine to compress in a really weird way, which I think anybody's kind of tweaked their back jumping off of something weird at some point in time. You know how that kind of is. So now you amplify the height, the jump, the explosiveness, and the speed. There's a reason why that rule exists, and there's a reason why that should be called. Again, it's one call. Unfortunately, it doesn't go your way, and unfortunately, it is a factor in the game. I think the part that was more frustrating for me, though, was just how many times you could see him committing the same exact moving screen violation so many times over and over and over again on every single play. There's 3 separate plays that you can very clearly pick apart that are not those that were a foul. The guy should have fouled out minimum at that point. Like that should have been his foul out to get out of the game, or he should have been benched and it should have been a factor. But unfortunately, it wasn't because he had one foul at the end of the game. That's one of those things where I hate just sitting here for forever and talking about this, but it is really frustrating because you see that kind of officiating and lack of balance there that really does start to nag at you. And because we've seen this happen in Big 12 play. And unfortunately, again, it's the end of your season. So that's plenty on that. We can go forever, but it's frustrating. It sucks. And that is what it is. Season's over. So with the season over, Steve, I think it's time to do the season eulogy for real this time, because we kind of did it, but then like the NIT was happening and then we kind of went on a run. So then there was some magic and then it was all up in the air. What do you got for me?
In a eulogy, you're supposed to offer thoughts on how the person lived and what you'd want to, like, what they'd want to be remembered as. And so I kind of had some time today to think about, how I felt about this team and what I will remember them as. Obviously the great thing about one season is that one season ends. It's not really a person. It's not a good analogy, for an actual eulogy, because eulogies are serious and we are not. But so here's what I want to think about, from this past season and how we go forward. To me, they kind of overplayed my expectations of them, honestly. I mean, they did finish 11th in the conference, same exactly as what they were predicted to do. So the media, for once, had them predicted like exactly right. So I'm happy about that. That was, they did pretty well there. But it was just a little bit interesting to see what they did, how they progressed through the season and how fans, even knowing that it was going to be a lot harder this year, still felt like it could have been better. And I'm not here to disagree with them. I do think that there was certainly some points where you could have been better, and I think there were some missed opportunities left on the table for us. But to go through our first trip through the Big 12 Sun, 7-11, and you win 2 games in the conference tournament, and you find yourself playing on Thursday with a chance to, keep advancing. I think if you had asked everybody before the season without any context of how the conference season would have gone, I feel like that would have been good. But obviously, it's Wes's 3rd year now. There's certain expectations of him that get elevated, obviously, even though we're in a better conference. I do want to think, though, of this team as a team that never quit. They always stayed in it. They always fought. They were a little bit prone to give up some leads from time to time and not really able to really step on the neck some more times than they should have. But I really liked the makeup of this team, even though there was so many different starting lineups. Look at all the guys we got to see grow this year. We got to see Dan Skillings really blossom this year. We got to see in the NIT Jizzle James really become like a dude that we think can stay here. And he's staying here, by the way. Don't listen to any damn Barstool tweets. As 2 people who used to tweet from that account, we don't know nothing. So I understand it's April Fool's, but every day on the internet is April Fool's. So
this is true.
We don't know. We never knew anything, and we still will never know anything. So anyway, as long as those 2 come back, I will feel really good about our chances this fall. And, obviously we lose John Newman, lose Odi Oguama. We did give them their flowers, but it is going to be tough to lose John. He's a great defensive player, and I feel, that we're going to have some other people step up in his absence. But, I liked what Josh Reed did this year. Josh Reed took a step this year.
Mm-hmm.
Simas Lukosius, man, we talked about it like down the stretch, but how many times did we say we wish we'd have had a full year of Simas? Like there were so many things where, definitely if you're dooming it, just all depends on how you look at it. Right. And I spent 10 minutes to explain that point just to say that. But if you're negative, you're like, well, they didn't make the tournament. They played in the NIT and now we're late on our transfer portal, which by the way, we were offering dudes while we were still in the tournament. Novel concept. I know.
Right. You can do 2 things at once.
That's why you have a staff, folks. Yeah, that's why you have other people other than the head coach do this shit. Like,
right.
That's why we have staffs, and support staffs. And Cincinnati's got a good one from everything I know. But in essence, Justin, my expectations, I think they surpassed them. And even seeing what people were estimating of them going into the season, like I remember that Cyclone Larry tweet where he's like, yeah, I think that UC is going to finish like second to last in the Big 12. They're going to go like 17-15 and like 3-15 in the conference. And like, at least among Cyclone Larry's shitposting expectations, we surpassed those. But, we still won 20 games, and which is, like kind of hard to do in the Big 12 for sure. So I just am happy that we at least got to that point. I've rambled long enough, Justin. Give me your eulogy.
I mean, I think you kind of hit all the points. I think overall the entire season again was definitely a roller coaster. Sorry, shaky. I hit the mic there.
I blame
It
myself. I
definitely was
was drinking no free ads, but it was a soda, so I got a little more energy today.
But yeah, I think overall, like it was absolutely a roller coaster. Like it went, the highs were high and the lows were low. But I think even so, saying that, I still think the lows were still pretty high because looking at the way the entire season went, I think we defied expectations a lot. And I think that we really kind of pushed the program forward, especially against a lot of adversity with just a lot more experienced teams and a lot of teams returning some, pivotal players. Of course, the transfer portal has a huge effect on teams year in and year out. And it's one of those things where you're always saying your prayers and saying, I hope that the transfer portal benefits me and hurts everybody else. And that's usually not how it goes. But I think for the Bearcats, the portal pickups and the portal drops that they had this year overall benefited them in both ways. I think, the losses that we had this season weren't necessarily detrimental. They came more from chemistry than anything, but I don't think they necessarily lost anything in minutes, time. And if you look at where some of these other guys ended up and the impact that they had, it was about what you would expect from an American Athletic Association player, American Athletic Conference player, transferring to another, team. It didn't really translate. There was no upgrades for those talent. And I think for us on our end, we did get upgrades in talent in the locker room. And I think we did see those benefits. Like you said, with CMOS, with Aziz, with Jamil at certain points, I think there was definitely some pivotal pieces of this roster with some of those additions that we saw benefits to. I think some of the things that may have hurt was unfortunately CJ was not able to stay healthy all year, which, you can never really count on, but it's one of those things that it's still, from what we got out of him, he was doing a good job and he was doing what we expected of him. We just couldn't keep him healthy. And so I think overall the entire season, like your ads made sense. There wasn't anything that was a complete, just utter pitfall other than maybe, like I said, those injuries or where you just don't get guys on the court, unfortunately. But you got the transfers worked out. You got the waivers worked out. That worked out in your favor eventually. And
Dave
again,
Yost, shout out.
yeah. And again, those things should have hurt your season even more. But, thankfully, you're able to bounce back and make the most of it. And, I think another 20-win season, again, like you said, that's one of those points that I look to. As long as you hit that in the Big 12, you're really cooking. You're on the edge there. It's going to make a difference. And so I'm really hoping that that is something that we can translate and take to next season, and build off some of the momentum that we have there. Clearly, those guys that were key at the end of the season, still have the eligibility. They're still going to be around. Not quote unquote. We're hoping, crossing our fingers, those guys are going to stick around. Between CMOS, Dan, and Jizzle, I think that's a super, super solid core. You add your, kind of your secondary, but still very important pieces in Aziz. You're going to add Betsy. You're going to add McKinley. You're going to get Ravon in the mix too. You may or may not have Vic. I have no idea what's going on there. You may or may not have Jamil. We don't know what's going on there either. You don't know how some of these guys are going to work, but if you can keep that core of those three of CMOS, Jizzle, and Dan, your highest producers, and then you get Day back healthy, I think the sky's the limit for this team. I think they really can get back to the tournament next year. It just really revolves around keeping that core. That's going to be the most important part. And Wes even said that in his final press conference after the game. Just keep that core. And I think we got a lot to look forward to. So overall, great season. I wouldn't even say great. I think it was a great improvement on last year. Great for where we want it to be. No, but it was good. It was serviceable. It was exciting. It was fun. And overall, if I were to just grade the season, I'd say a B.
I think that's fair. Maybe a B minus for me. Like just to, like, losing those couple of games that you probably didn't need to lose. Drop me like just to the minus line. But I liked it. I mean, you still. I mean, even though West Virginia and Oklahoma State were not very good this year, there's still Big 12 teams, so you can't really assume anything. Like I did a couple
Right.
times when we were looking at the schedule, but. Um, Still, though, win at BYU, win at Texas Tech, a couple good wins down the stretch there. Even though Kansas was down 2 men, you still beat them pretty good. Like I liked what they did this year, and
Yeah.
I definitely think that West can improve upon that. And I want to see what you think will happen once we get into the transfer portal.
Like I said, it's the best thing to bless college sports and the absolute worst thing to bless college sports. It is the transfer portal. Quite an introduction for one of the things that I love and hate. I think we're in a really interesting point in time, and we'll see again how it gets used every year. It's a little bit different every year. That I think, and this is what makes it exciting, but also terrifying, is because far and well that any of your athletes could pick up and leave at any time. If they don't like the way somebody talked to them, if they don't like the way something's going, if something needs to change for them, up and out. And it's no questions asked. It's a very simple system now. So, with that said, I'm going to do two things here. I'm going to start off with this. Jizzle James, this is our ad. Stay, brother. That's all. Where else are you going to go? You're in the Big 12. You're in the Premier Conference. You're in a team that's going to compete. You're on a team that loves you and is going to keep you around for as long as you want to stay until you inevitably go to the NBA, because we all know it's happening. It's just a matter of when. According to Barstool Sports, it's happening today. So there's that. And secondly, I think,
and he's going to start next year too.
Yes, and I think that's exactly where I was going to go next too. Is you look at the way that this transfer portal can work out for you. You're at the end of your season, and I think the filing line has kind of got everybody in order. I think it makes sense. Like if you return Day, which I'm sure you will, I think Day and Jizzle are gonna have to split minutes, but I think the roles are gonna be a bit reversed. I really do. I think Jizzle's shown and proved towards the end of the season that he can handle that 30 plus minutes a game, and he can give you a lot of production. That's no knock on Day. I think he's a quality point guard, and I think he's a starter. And I think that would be my only concern as to why he might go somewhere else, is because he can be that starter for a lot of teams. But unfortunately, we just have two guys that are very good and very competitive and can fill that role. And they happen to play the same position, and they happen to be the same size. They happen to have a very similar play style. I think the big thing here is just how that shakes out. But I think you have your one figured out. Now, Steve, you have your one figured out. You have no questions about it. You have a 1 and a 2 at your 1. Your 3, you have a 3 to 4, but you have Betsy, you have CMOS. Rayvon is, I think he's tall enough to play a 3, but he's a shooting guard. Small.
He'd probably
forward.
be like in a guard focus lineup.
Yeah,
3.
I
Like
would think he'd be in the
maybe
small.
more of a 2, but yeah, like
But
yeah, I could see him being a 3.
You could have him split that.
Mhm.
Realistically, it's possible. So you have a deep 3 there too. Your 4, we don't know. Your 5, you have Aziz. If you return Jamil, you're going to have Jamil. You could also have Vic there. So what are you going to do with this transfer portal, Steve? What do you do? Because you have your 1, you've got your 3, and you kind of got a 5. What are your 2s and your 4s? Or maybe where do you fill something else in?
I have one name, and he is 1 hour up the road, and we played against him this year. And I would literally build Wes Miller a statue in my home if we got this man. And Justin, you know who I'm talking about, so let's just say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. DaRon Holmes, baby.
I was wondering which direction you were going.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, yeah. I mean, well, I said an hour, so I was kind of like trying to like poke you there. I mean, maybe Marquez Warwick, just as like a more senior option.
See,
But
that's where I was wondering if you were going to say something there. I was like, that's not really an hour. That's like 10 minutes across the river.
yeah,
And then I lost. Yeah. But
well,
Deron Holmes.
yeah. Well, again, and I'm not tampering, whatever. I don't think he'll enter his name in the transfer portal. I assume he'll probably just try and put his name in the draft. I have no idea what he's done yet. I have not heard his name so far. So, but yeah, I would be very excited. Let's just say that if we were able to bring him in. But regardless, someone in that style of player of a Deron Holmes, because I do think that, while we've got, like you said, our 1, our 3, our 5, maybe a couple twos in there, we just don't have that 4. And I think we were all kind of hoping that Vic would be that 4, really. And he just was not able to really do that. He played more like a 5. And then, unfortunately, I think he lost some of his confidence. So he just, like, by the end of the year, he wasn't really playing like much, if at all. So I do think like some kind of stretch 4 would be just like an awesome like addition to this team. I think somebody who can free up your shooters, set and allow CMOS to get open, but also be like a threat down in the paint. I think that would be just somebody to unlock this team. I haven't looked at the transfer portal report lately. Shout out to our guy Ethan Bach. He's helping run that account. But I would be interested to see what kind of those guys are in the portal right now, because I think that would be great to have that. Obviously, it's just kind of an idea for Deron Holmes. I really don't think, like, realistically it's possible for him to come, because he just had a great year at Dayton. Why would you leave there if you already got in the tournament and you're leaving somewhere to go somewhere else who wasn't in the tournament? So I get it on his point, but pipe dream. Anyway, though, Justin, I do think that 4 would be a great touch, because theoretically too, you could use either CMOS or CJ as your shooting guard per se, if, and I know Wes is kind of playing like that positionless basketball, but that's not really CMOS or CJ's job to bring up the ball and run the offense. Their job is to kind of get open, but they're not big enough to be threes. So technically, I guess you could put them at that 2 spot. So, and again, full season, healthy CMOS, I would love to see how what he does in a starting role that whole time. So I don't know. I would like that 4 to be a thing, though. Maybe if you lose somebody, a 5. I don't want to. I'll also add this, Justin. I think we all have our internal ideas of who might be leaving. I don't wish anybody to leave. I would love to have everybody stay. You're all Bearcats in my heart. But if you make a decision and you choose to leave my loving graces, that's fine. I get it. Do what you got to do get your family, get your chicken, get your mentals, as the great Marshawn Lynch once said. That is obviously I'm different than other people. Everybody else is allowed to have their own opinion. That's just my thought on it, Justin. I like to try and look at things in a more positive light. And I kind of feel like that's where I'm leaning with just players on our current roster. I don't want to see anybody go, but if they do, I wish them all the success in their future endeavors.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll put it this way too. I feel like one of the ways that I look at this entire roster, like when you go into next year, and I feel a very similar way to you here, Steve, but I mentioned like the 1, 3, and the 5 you kind of have solved. I also realized in the middle of thinking after that is that I didn't mention exactly how Dan fits in there, because I'm not sure how Dan and CMOS split, because they're both technically a 3 and they're both usable as a 2. And I think like that range where you can put them, you have a 1, 2, 3 with Jizzle, Day, CMOS, and Dan. Obviously, you can't put all 4 of those guys out on the court at the same time. I think it ends up shaking out to Jizzle, Dan, and CMOS, wherever those guys end up. Based on size, I really think that you keep Aziz out there in the 5. And then, like you said, that 4 is a super pivotal point. And here's where I have issue. Vic was a very important piece at the beginning of the season. Fell off a cliff. Jamil is very capable and useful, 4 or 5 to put in there if you ran Aziz and Jamil. on the court at the same time, or if you ran Vic and Jamil or Vic and Aziz on the same court at the same time. With both of those guys on the court at the same time, I think the part where I find issue is that they could kind of do the same thing, and none of those three guys ended up winning it out to where if you put in a 4 on this team, that you could clearly say, this is the guy who's going to take that spot. I think Vic, unfortunately, because of just the downturn towards the end of the season, I don't know if he's back. It feels, the energy in that kind of regard feels a little off. I don't know where that's going. We'll find out. But as far as Aziz and Jamil, I don't think either of them has necessarily completely won that spot. I think Aziz has definitely done a lot more to have that spot, but I think Jamil's size and presence in the way that he can actually use his body type is very capable of playing at this Big 12 level. It's just sometimes you see the flashes, but you don't see everything hit and run. And that's where I feel like, at least at that point, Aziz's size works out. So again, you have your 1, your 2, your 3, your 5, and behind Dan or behind CMOS, I think because it is a lot of that positionless basketball, you really kind of look at the 1 as filled. You look at the 2 and 3 as a possible, 5 guys that you're going to kind of mix in there. That includes Betsy, who you're going to throw in there too, and Rayvon, like I said. And then that 4 just feels like a huge gap. And I think that's where you really need to go out into the portal and you need to put your stamp down if you're Wes Miller and find that guy. If he's a bruiser, great. If he can hustle people in the paint, if he's a little bit bigger, if he's just another 5 who can play the 4, great. But if he's a stretch 4, he fits really well into your offense and gives you another dimension to your 3-point shooting, which again, especially for your bigs, was lackluster. That was the craziest and most exciting thing about Vic at the beginning of the season was he was banging threes. Like he could hit them. And then with that kind of disappearance, you lost that element from your bigs. And I think that would be really pivotal to help spread out the floor a lot more. So,
yeah,
like I said, I think that's your stamp. I think that's the key thing. No matter what happens, you got to go out and get a starting quality level 4. Deron Holmes is absolutely that guy. And if you don't get a Deron Holmes, find somebody like him. And if you don't get either of those and you want to add something else, if CJ is still in this lineup next year, if he decides to come back and play more basketball, if he decides to go somewhere else, if he decides to stop playing, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know where the room is there on that. But he's going to be, I think, 25, 24, somewhere around there. He's going to be getting up there too in age. And so I don't know if he's going to be deciding to play. The Marquez Work option, I think, is a very viable option too for another person at that 2 spot that could really help fill some of those gaps.
Is he
give you some
I
competition.
haven't watched much NKU, to be honest. Is he more of a 2 or is he a 1? I mean, I know
I think he's more of a 1, at least from what my read on him was. Let me look this up again because he plays some really heavy minutes.
Well, he had a lot of points too, so that was like kind of what I was thinking. But
right.
But you're right, though. I mean, I'm not going to turn down like a guard with experience. Somebody did tweet at us and mention that his splits were against power conference teams were not great, but
yep.
I do think that there's and I'm not going to turn down experience just out of hand, but I do kind of want to see if they value his splits. Again, like you're playing more games against teams at your level. You're probably not like as equipped as a single player to go up against a bigger team unless you're like, Jack Golke.
Right.
But other than that, I'm not willing to just completely throw out that option just because of that one tweet and one split. I still think he's a senior guard with experience, with a lot of experience and a lot of buckets. If he does come here, and I don't really know what he's looking at right now, but if he does come here, I definitely could see him stepping in right away.
Well, and I want to add this too. So if you do look at his year by year, season by season splits, over the course of his career so far, he's had by year going 2020 up through now 32, 31, 34, 36 minutes played per game through those 4 years. He's also seen his points increase and his output increase from 15 to 16 to 18 to 19.9 to basically 20. So he's improving scoring year over year on essentially very similar minutes. And that's one thing that I do like to see. However, I will say his free throw shooting, great. It's improved. He was up to almost 87% this year. However, his 3-point shooting, he had a rough year this year. And I don't know if it was a transition. I'd have to see the volume of threes that he was shooting across those years, but he was at 36%, 35%, 38%, and then dropped to 29 this year. And so if it depends on if they really want to look at that and they value that too, if that's a thing for, a guy like this, where you have the experience, you have the minute load, you have a guy who can certifiably be a starter. Of course, for NKU, this is your go-to guy. So this is a very key player for them. How he fits into a Big 12 offense, how he fits into a Big 12 team is very different, especially with a team that has a 2 and a 3 and a 1 very much figured out. He might not even be a target. And that's kind of where I'm like, I love the option and I love the experience, but I don't know. And then if you return CJ too, there's no room. Like there just isn't any room. And I think that's where your 4s and your 5s are going to be really key. And if you can make some additions or make some more upgrades there, that'd be huge. But again, still very early in the transfer portal, lots and lots of time left to still make some moves. There's still going to be some great players out there to grab. So really excited to see what happens there. But that's a lot of basketball, and I think that we have talked plenty of it. So again, the 2023-2024 season, we agree, was a success. A great success? Meh. A good success? Yeah. So overall, a good success. That's where we will leave off for the 2023-2024 season. We'll probably talk some more about it a little bit, maybe some more moves, maybe some transfer portal stuff happens, but that's where we leave off. That's where we leave off for basketball. So it was a fun season, great ride. Thank you to all the seniors. Thank you to all the guys who are staying. Thank you to all the guys who might be leaving and going somewhere else. We appreciate you. Love this season with the Bearcats. A lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, Charlie Hustle, baby, hit me up. Charlie Hustle has vintage made fresh, and they got all the gear for y'all. So head over to www.charliehustle.com and check out this awesome gear on their Cincinnati tab within the collegiate tab. You can filter down there. They have a variety of shirts. They also have a hoodie now too. So make sure to check all those out. Use the promo code 101215 for 15% off of all non-sale items, and that'll be good for as long as we keep this deal going. So keep on heading over there, check it out, grab the merch if you don't already have it, grab a different shirt if you don't already have it. I will say I wore this one a few times over the past few weeks. Fantastic. Very, very comfortable. Like, honestly, very quality threads. And that's not just us being paid in an ad. Like, it is legitimately comfortable, and I would absolutely recommend it. So,
the other thing too that I like, there's a tag. Like there's an actual tag on the back of the shirt. There's a lot of shirts now that like are trying to like make the tag smaller or just screen print it into the shirt. If you kind of like that old feeling of having the tag on the back of your shirt, they got a tag for you. And I want to issue a edict to all Bearcat fans. If you get some Charlie Hustle gear, tweet it at us. We'd love to see you rocking your Charlie Hustle gear. Obviously we'll talk about it later, but there's still a lot of spring sports for the Bearcats that are being played as we speak. So you should definitely wear your Charlie Hustle gear to those games. Send us a picture. We'll retweet it. Give you some extra free engagement. So definitely interact with us. Show us your Charlie Hustle gear. We'd love to see you rocking it.
Absolutely. Thank you to Charlie Hustle, as always, for sponsoring the show. And we move on to the back half. We have spring football moves and grooves. Steve, hit me.
Well, Justin, I actually liked one of your tweets that you put up today. Sometimes I don't remember whether I put up something or you did, but this was I wasn't really on Twitter much today, so I think I know this was you. You quoted a tweet from the football Twitter account where it was, the Drake meme where he says no to one thing and then he points yes to another thing. Drogosh interception was the no, but Drogosh interception was also the yes. And it was a video of Brady Drogosh, who made the switch to linebacker recently, intercepting a ball at practice. And you tweeted, Justin, your primed candidate for the starting QB job in 2024 has an interception, but he's on the right side of it. What a world. And Justin, I agree with that. I am still just very intrigued by this whole situation.
Yeah.
So I want to hear your thoughts, but I just think it's weird. It's strange.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the classic Bearcats thing of why not take this guy who plays QB and move him somewhere else? Why not take this guy who's bought into the program and put him somewhere else? We've seen it with plenty of players of recent and of past. I think it works out most of the time for these guys. So I'm really excited to see. Clearly, you could tell from watching Drogish's tape from high school that he was a very athletic and very useful player at the QB position and could do a little bit of everything. And I honestly think like he's going to be fun. Like, I mean, I don't even know. I really doubt, unless the season gets to like some weird point with a lot of just random stuff going on. Let me just throw a name out there. I'm just going to throw this out there. I know he's on defense now. He's on the other side of the ball. Taysom Hill. You never know. Like you could put him on defense, you could put him on offense, you could put him in the quarterback, you could put him in the running back. He could play. He could probably long snap for you. Like having that guy that can just do a little bit of everything is really, really crucial. And again, he's got the build, he's got the speed and the athleticism to play at the linebacker position. I love the move, and I love the fact too that again. You look at this is the thing that I think is really important. This is the biggest takeaway from this move in general. And I'm going to tie in another one. Look at Evan Prater. Look at Brady Drogish. You have two guys who are QBs who could go somewhere else and play QB. They're very talented, could go somewhere else and play QB. But guess what? Scott Satterfield, who everybody has given a lot of shit for, and everybody has said, this isn't the guy of the future. He took two recruits from previous coaches and said, guess what? You're not going to be able to play this position, but I got a spot for you. Do you want it? You can go somewhere else. The door is there if you need it. Understand, can part ways. And both of these guys who absolutely could play QB somewhere else bought in and stayed in the system with Satterfield. I think that says a lot about your coaching staff. I think that says a lot about your program. Evan, Cincinnati guy. Brady, is he a Cincinnati guy, Steve?
I think he's locked in. I mean, I really like it. You know, it's like it is just still weird that an Elite 11 quarterback could just somehow, you know, not be in favor and choose to end up as a linebacker. I mean, I guess it's not the worst thing that you have too many quarterbacks, but here's the thing that I like. Obviously, you like that, you know, a guy like Drogish, who could probably, like you said, just play quarterback somewhere else, decided to stay within the program. And two, you know, Tyson Veit, who just came over from Iowa State, where he had a quarterback and molded him into one of their best linebackers in program history, Joel Lanning. He decided to change that guy into a linebacker, and he became really successful. So your defensive coordinator's track record with former quarterbacks becoming linebackers is a good thing. Now, obviously, you know, I don't know the level that Brady Drogish was operating at when he was making guys, when he was playing high school quarterback, you know, how good he was at reading defenses and such. But my neophyte football brain doesn't know anything, by the way, thinks, though, that some of those skills could be applicable to the other side of the field just because of the generic knowledge of what your offense is doing and how you're trying to attack their defense. And can you just bring that over to the other side of the field, what your defense is doing to try and stop that offense? And if in the mind of a quarterback, because, you know, everybody says linebacker is the quarterback of the defense usually. Like, look at Ivan Pace. He had the green dot this year. He was coordinating where things went. So I liked that, one, he chose to stay, and two, he went and took that position because I like Veit's previous success here. I also want to drop in, Justin. I went to Elder, as some of you may or may not know. One of our former quarterbacks at Elder actually went on to play 3 great years as a defensive end at Cincinnati. His name was Craig Carey. So if you ever hear any of the Kelseys or Zach Colaris talking about their old days, like, one of their best friends is Craig Carey. And he's just a good dude. I used to see him a lot at the alumni hangouts. And it is pretty impressive that they turned him from a quarterback into a D end, and he was just bulked up too. Same thing with Cam Jones. Cam Jones was a highly touted
Oh boy, talk about a
quarterback
move.
prospect that we moved to offensive line, and he was just like wearing 69 and beefing up, dude. Like I love that guy so much. So maybe it's just that he was highly rated coming into UC, and that's what made us curious about this move. But honestly, I don't hate like the idea behind it. You got to get your athletes on the field, and there's no point in using a scholarship spot if the guy doesn't want to play here, or if he's just going to be another clipboard holder,
Right.
And if everything goes to complete shit this season, you have another quarterback that is on the defense. So like, you can just pull him off out of the linebacker room and put him into the quarterback room, and he knows what he's doing. So overall, I think it's weird, but I like it.
Open question too. Do you think that he could also kick? I'm curious. I don't know. Maybe he's got it. Who knows?
I'd have to look, honestly. I mean, we did use Gunnar Keel in that pooch kick formation, so
I do remember that.
he could be a triple threat. We never know.
Steve, do we have any other points here on the football moves for spring?
I will say that we just talked about one important spring topic, but I will remind everyone, as our friends and one of our favorite podcasts at Split Zone Duo just talked about, that in this current era of transfer portal and consistently changing staffs, spring ball does not really mean much. It's kind of just a way to get guys who are in the roster, especially guys who are early enrollees, just get them into your system, at least get them to train and playing football and playing at the speed of the other guys. And just from listening to all the post-practice interviews, though, I do think what was more important about this offseason, it will not exactly be the practices in the spring game, but it will have been the offseason training regimen that our strength coach Nico put them through. And all the guys have kind of raved about that. They said it was tough. They said that they worked some hard days, but they all felt like they got better for it. And, their goal this year is to win a Big 12 championship. And I mean, that's everybody's goal, in every conference is to win your conference championship. So I'm not really going to hold them to that if they don't win the conference championship. But I don't think we really had that like spoken out loud goal last year, if I remember correctly, Justin. So I want to keep making lemons out of lemonade, as we talked to Clint Foster about. We have unfortunately, like, we had a setback last year, hoping that it will get better this year, and we've got our Bowl by Boulder hashtag ready to go for the season. But if all these kids, who have all of this opportunity in the world right now, like, they don't have to sit out, they can just go somewhere and play immediately, and probably like make as much or potentially more money just to transfer somewhere else, choosing to stay and play for Scott Satterfield, I feel like that's a good sign, and it has to make you feel at least somewhat better than you might have previously about him.
Yeah, no. And like I said, I mean, I think that's the most important thing for me. And that's the biggest takeaway from spring here is the guys who stick around there are, bought in. And the more that you do that, the less, this is a huge thing too. The less moves that you have going out of your transfer portal and the more that you have in, I think says more about your program in a good way, especially in this day and age. It's just good to have. You want to have those guys stick around, whether or not they're even a starting quality player, whether or not they're a great, addition to your team for, a quality 40 minutes a game. You want these guys to stick around your program because I think it says more about your coaching staff. And I think it says more about the way that they see their future being communicated, especially when these guys are high recruits, when these guys are, in a position where they can go somewhere else. Just being able to keep people around your program is really pivotal. And again, comes back to the chemistry. I think, there's two ways to win. And this will be my last point on this, and we'll move on. There's two ways to win in this day and age when it comes to sports in general. Collegiate, D1 sports, even D2. You either win through the portal or you win by sticking as far away as possible from the portal. Like, those are your two ways to win. You can make some additions, But I think like being able to grow your team as a core and really hone in on that and keep a lot of those, people. And that's not saying like we're never going to use the portal. Like I don't want to touch it, but making very small, incremental, valuable additions, but keeping your team together is huge. Or flip that whole team around because you need that reset and bam, you're going and running with it. I think it's a healthy use of the portal, but you just have to, some teams that just kind of keep moving 30 guys around, 20 guys around every year, it's not really going to continually work for you. You do have to be able to have some kind of core that grows and ages because, I mean, look at so many of these other teams. Look at the experience that having some 23, 24-year-old guys out on the field in court, no matter what sport you're playing, does for you versus having a bunch of freshmen. Clearly, it hasn't worked out for Calipari. So, I mean,
Well,
you
and
can
just
only
look at
have so many
Colorado.
freshmen on the court.
Like by the time UC plays Colorado, they will probably have just as many injuries as Colorado does. But Colorado just has a lot of transfers and
Yep.
not as many young guys either. And I think it would be interesting to see how that game plays out if you are. I think the only person that seriously wanted Dion here was Hummer, who was talking about that at the time, but if you are one of those people that wanted Dion over everybody else, I'll just be interested to see like how those people feel about both coaches, the one that we currently have and Dion, after that game. And I do feel good about Bowl by Boulder. I do feel like we have a chance to do that. And um, I just really want to see how the depth chart evaluates as it goes on, just because I think that there's a good chance that we can really get to that 6-win mark.
Yeah.
Because all these teams in the Big 12, that's the good part about the Big 12 is that, you're never really completely out of it. You're all kind of in the same zip code within SP plus and your other power rankings. So I feel that if the Bearcats can just make a couple good moves here and there, they still have a chance to get where they want to go and get back to the bowl season.
Absolutely. Steve, are you familiar with the term big stick diplomacy?
Yes. Teddy Roosevelt, right? Yes. Speak softly. Yes. There we go.
Speak softly and carry a big fucking stick.
Yes.
And you will go far. To end that
Yes.
quote.
Yes.
Big 12 expansion. This could go on for forever. This could be a very long conversation. This will happen for, I'm sure, throughout the entire summer, and I'm sure throughout the next few seasons. How do we package this into a 3-minute segment?
Here's all I'm gonna say, Justin. We made the joke on our account that NC State would look real good wearing that Big 12 logo, and it doesn't really seem feasible that the ACC would fall apart just because there's 17 teams, and even if Florida State and Clemson leave, there'd still be 15 teams. It would just have to be like a real full explosion or implosion, I guess, in this case. But here's what I'm thinking, Justin. The Big 12 has kind of positioned itself as, as long as all of our teams stay together, and, I guess the only team that would really be overly desired by another conference is Kansas going to the Big 10. But other than that, you've got 12 to 16 teams that are kind of obviously in a same state of life together. A couple of them could be good candidates. I mean, I'm in the backyard of Arizona State. If they ever get their act together in any other sports, shout out to their swimming team, by the way, who did just win the NCAA men's team title. But if they ever were to get their act together in football, I'm telling you right now, Phoenix is a huge market. And obviously there's so many transplants here. Like I know Nebraska fans, Ohio State fans, et cetera. So it's hard to really get them all to buy into Arizona State football. But if there were ever a time where a coach really just killed it here and got this shit rolling at Arizona State, I could theoretically see a Big Ten or an SEC. I don't really think the SEC wants to expand too much more because they've I think they're at the water point where any further expansion does not bring in much for them. I think I don't really think they want to bring in Clemson or Florida State. I think both of those two, they kind of have those markets already. So I don't know what the point is for them. So I do think that seeing what happens with this expansion will be interesting. But here's what I want. I want Virginia Tech. I want Pitt. Even though Pitt kind of stinks in most of their sports, I still want Pitt. I still want Louisville, and I kind of want Miami just because Miami, would help out UCF, and also I know how much they suck, but it's still Miami, man. Like it's still like, it's all about the U, Luther Campbell, the smoke, like Michael, like it's still the U. Like they are still a huge brand. And I think
Right.
having that in this conference would be awesome. And then you just cap it at 20. Don't invite Tulane. Whatever you do, don't invite Tulane. I don't want to play basketball in a 4,000 seat gym anymore. So, I mean, although Houston only has like 3,000 more seats, but anyway, um, I'll end with this, Justin. I feel like the Big 12 has positioned itself well in this era where everybody wants to say, oh, it's the SEC and the Big 10. They are just miles ahead of everybody else. But the Big 12 has positioned itself well with this basketball success. Obviously, no teams in the Final Four this year, but they're clearly the number one conference all year for college basketball, men's college basketball. They're improving on the women's side as well. I do feel that they've positioned themselves in a strength of basketball, and they can build themselves up with better football success and more football wins, where they won't be left out as a conference out of the eventual, like breakaway push whenever that decides to happen, because they're just going to look at, SEC and Big Ten and say, yeah, sure, like maybe we're not on your level on football, but you're not going to break away and play your own basketball tournament without Kansas, without
Right.
Cincinnati, without Texas Tech, without like Baylor, without these top brands and schools and coaches, where you would not have as much ratings without them. Obviously, they'll have, Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina. Like there are definitely some ratings, but Kansas is one of those pools. And, I think we all kind of joke about them, and they're kind of like, I've made jokes that they're the Duke of this conference, but no matter what you say, they're a ratings monster. And they, in this era where that's the only thing that really seems to matter, as long as we hook our life raft to Kansas and Kansas basketball, I feel good about the Big 12 chances of survival.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very fair point too. And I think, it's coming back to the name of this segment, big stick diplomacy. One of the key things is, you know, you come passively. Of course, we came off very aggressive at first. U.S. is known for very aggressive expansion, but we came off. You come off passively. You're there. You exist. And when shit hits a fan, have a backup plan and a backup plan for your backup plan. Always have a way to survive. And I think that's the biggest thing for the Big 12 now. When you look at how these conferences are starting to expand, how these conferences are starting to strategically pick up teams from different areas, always have a plan B, have a plan C, have a plan D. I'm sure Brett Yormark on his desk has a short list of 20 teams at all times, from the best to worst, that he says, I want this team. And I'm sure they all include a Clemson, a Miami, and a Florida
You got to
State,
shoot
a
big,
Duke,
of course.
any of those ACC teams. I'm sure he's got every single one of those athletic directors on speed dial at all times. If shit hits the fan, I can guarantee you he will be ready to come in and clean up. So I'm not worried about, the trajectory there. Like you said, I think they position themselves very well, and I am curious to see how everything kind of churns out. But overall, I think we're in a really good spot for the future where, at least being in the conference, this is the same thing that we said before. You finally got yourself in a good position where now you don't really have to worry about this. Because if you were like, say, USF, for example, who did pretty darn good for themselves in their first year, with was it Golish? Alex Golish from
Mhm.
Tennessee did a good job with their first year with a new head coach. And then on top of that, in basketball, had a damn good year in the American, after not doing so hot the past few years. Like they've kind of hit a turnaround point. But again, you know, Cincinnati clearly, UCF clearly, Houston clearly has all these teams have done themselves due justice to get in the position that they are. And now, it's nice to be on the boat instead of searching for a life raft. And that, I think, is where we can leave that off. Expansion, if it happens, still very interested, still very curious to see how all this goes, because like we said, can happen like that. You never know. These conferences can splinter, but I think when you're in one of these big three, you're in a core spot to survive and you're in a good position for the future. Steve, hit us with the Bearcats Sports Wrap Up in T-minus 2 minutes, and we are going to be outie.
Yes, sir. So let's start off with baseball real quick. Baseball unfortunately dropped a 3-game series at Baylor this weekend, and they were scheduled to play in the Joe Nuxhall Classic on Tuesday. But as you might know, or you might not know, Cincinnati is within Noah's Ark right now territory because it is just pouring all the time. So that game has been postponed or outright canceled. Not exactly sure. So hopefully the Bearcats will have another chance to play this weekend as they take on they take on TCU in a 3-game home series this weekend. So good luck to the baseball Bearcats. I want to shout out the women's tennis team, man. They have had kind of a rough start to their conference season, but they got the sweep last on the 24th as they swept Houston 4-0 at home. So congratulations to them. I know it's been probably a tough season for them so far, but great for them to get the win. Women's basketball, they unfortunately did drop their second round women's NIT game to Purdue Fort Wayne, but they got great news today as Jillian Hayes will return for another season at Cincinnati. So that's a big get for Katrina Merriweather, and I'm glad that Jillian is deciding to stay. And then I'm going to close out with women's lacrosse. They got a big 12-11 win this past weekend against East Carolina at Nippert Stadium. And they will look to host this weekend. They are hosting Ohio State. Ever heard of them? This upcoming weekend at Nippert Stadium. So congrats on a great win to the lacrosse team, and definitely go out and support them if you can. They're a lot of fun. And by the way, not this weekend, but next weekend is the spring football game. So go out there and support your Bearcats this upcoming next Saturday. Believe it's the is it a Sunday game? That's weird. But anyway, go out there and support your Bearcats. And yes, I'm sorry. I'm reading the press release now. April 13th, next Saturday. I don't believe we'll be podcasting between then. Go out and enjoy the spring game. There's going to be a lot of fun activities going on. I'm still hoping for a Bears versus Cats spring game, by the way. Eventually, one day when I'm AD, I'll make that happen. But also, by the way, Jason and Travis Kelsey will be coming that Thursday to record their live podcast. Bengal Jim, you're an Ohio State fan. I don't want to hear anything from you concerning my Bearcats because you don't cheer for the Bearcats. So we don't need you, and just stay out of your life and try to yell at Travis more and get more free dinners paid for. So anyway, that's the end of my rant. Go Bearcats. Go watch these teams. They deserve your love and support as much as the teams that you already go see. Definitely shout out to the lacrosse team. Shout out to the tennis team for getting that first dub. And go see a baseball game this weekend if it's still not pouring. Baseball team, they've had some good wins this season, and they definitely need your support to really bring home some more and get to the conference tournament.
Absolutely. Well, I think that covers just about everything we got. Remember, Cincinnati folks, keep your head on a swivel. It is April 1st tonight, which means April 2nd is tomorrow, and there is a big old storm coming through, and it looks like it could produce some tornadoes. So we've had enough cyclones taking over in Cincinnati. I think that we can just put that one to bed. So with all that said, thank you for joining us this week, folks. Have a good rest of your week. We'll probably be back in about 2 weeks, 3 weeks time. We'll see. We'll see how all this shakes out. We'll give you a little bit of post game from the spring game and see maybe if there's more moves, maybe there's more transfer portal stuff coming up. We'll see what happens. But until next time, again, thanks for listening. Check out 1012 Network. Check out Charlie Hustle. Use that promo code 101215 for 15% off. That is 101215 for 15% off of all non-sale items, and get you some Bearcats gear or some other Big 12 stuff because they do have some great stuff there. So thanks, folks. Take it easy. Viva la Cats. Viva.